You send the email at 6:14 in the morning before anyone else at the company is even awake. 2 sentences long, effective in 3 weeks. No drama, no long paragraph explaining yourself. Then you make coffee and sit at the same kitchen table you've sat at for 6 years, and nothing happens. No confetti, no one calls. The house is exactly as quiet as it was yesterday. That's the whole story of this video. And there's a second ordinary morning waiting near the end, almost a year from this one. That matters even more than this email does. Here's what nobody tells you about actually getting free. You expect it to feel like something. It doesn't. It feels like an email, and then a normal Tuesday, and then somehow 100 more normal Tuesdays in a row, each one so unremarkable that you sometimes forget, for whole afternoons at a time, that anything has changed at all. The number that made that email possible isn't dramatic either. $641,000, sitting in a mix of index funds and a taxable brokerage account, built over 11 years on a salary that topped out around $91,000. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that's roughly $25,600 a year, plus whatever smaller income you pick up on your own terms from here forward. Not a fortune, not a yacht, just enough that the rat race stopped being mandatory. It took 11 years of the same unremarkable habit, repeated so many times it stopped feeling like a decision at all. A fixed percentage moved out of every paycheck before you ever saw it, automatically into the same 3 index funds, regardless of what the market did that particular month, regardless of the year you got the good raise or the year the car needed a transmission. Nobody watching your life from the outside during any single one of those 11 years would have clocked anything unusual happening. That's exactly why it worked. Here's the part that actually surprises people, and it's not the number, it's how little celebrating a number like that. There's no ceremony for crossing this line, no plaque, no moment where anyone hands you anything. You cross it on an ordinary Thursday, checking an account balance you check every couple of weeks anyway, and the only difference is that this time the math finally clears a threshold you calculated 11 years ago and mostly forgot you were working toward. This is where the quiet part gets tested, because freedom that nobody can see doesn't feel like freedom the first few times you use it. 3 weeks after the email, your last day, a coworker asks what you're doing next, the way people ask when they assume the answer is another job, a better title, a bigger number. You say you're taking some time, and you watch the question land wrong, watch her recalibrate you slightly downward in her head, from someone who made a move to someone who might be between things. There's a half-second pause before she says, "Oh, that's exciting," in the tone people use when they've already decided it isn't. You don't correct her. Correcting her would mean explaining the $641,000, and saying that number out loud to anyone has never once felt necessary. Here's the mechanism behind why that moment stings more than it should. Humans are wired to read status through visible signals, promotions, titles, bigger offices, because for most of human history, those signals were the only information available about who was thriving. Your brain is still running that old software, quietly grading you against a coworker's assumption, even though the actual scoreboard, the one in your brokerage account, has nothing to do with what she thinks just happened. The sting isn't a sign something's wrong. It's just old wiring firing on outdated information, the same wiring that used to keep you safe by caring what the tribe thought of you. 6 months in, the sting shows up less often, mostly because you stop giving people the setup that produces it. Someone asks what you do now, and you've learned to just say you do some consulting. 3 words, true enough, and the conversation moves on within a few seconds, instead of needing an explanation. Nobody has ever pushed past those 3 words. Nobody is actually as curious about your life as the anxious part of your brain assumes they are. A fact that would have terrified the version of you still sending status updates to a manager 8 months ago, and now mostly just feels like relief. There's a smaller test around month 7 that has nothing to do with anyone else at all. You're at the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon, a time you would never have been free at 8 months ago, and you catch yourself checking to see if anyone from your old office is around to witness it. Nobody is. It's just you, a cart, and an aisle of canned tomatoes at 2 in the afternoon on a weekday, and for a moment you feel almost guilty about how unremarkable the freedom looks from the outside. Then you catch yourself checking, and you laugh a little alone in the aisle at how long it takes the old scorekeeping to actually quiet down. There's a test that comes closer to home than the coworker ever did, and it happens around month 9. Your brother calls, not about money at first, just checking in, and somewhere in the conversation he mentions that things have been tight since the layoffs at his company, that he's picking up shifts on the weekend just to cover the mortgage. You can hear it in his voice, the specific flatness of someone who's decided not to make it sound as bad as it is. He doesn't ask you for anything. He would never ask you for anything, mostly because nothing about your life, the same car, the same modest house, the same haircut you've had for years, has ever signaled that you'd have room to help even if you wanted to ask. You could help. You have the room, but the conversation never goes anywhere near that possibility because you've never once looked like the kind of person people call when they need money. You hang up and you sit with that for a minute, turning over what it means that your own brother, the person who's known you longest, has no idea what's actually sitting in your accounts. That's the part of quiet wealth nobody warns you about in either direction. It protects you from being asked, and it also means the people who might actually need you sometimes never think to ask at all. You end up calling your brother back the next week on your own terms and offering directly in a way he can accept without it feeling like charity, precisely because you control when and how the number becomes visible instead of letting your appearance decide that for you. By month 11, something has shifted that's harder to name than the money ever was. You've stopped waiting for anyone to notice, not because you gave up on being noticed, but because the waiting itself was the last piece of the old rat race still running quietly in the background, checking for applause that was never going to come from an audience that was never really watching that closely in the first place. You notice it most in small moments now. A neighbor mentions a promotion at a barbecue, and the old you would have felt a flicker of needing to match it with something. The current you just asks a genuine question about the new role and means it, because there's nothing left in you scanning the conversation for where you rank. That absence, the missing scan, is quieter than any accomplishment you've ever had, and somehow more satisfying than most of them. Which brings us back to that second ordinary morning, almost a year after the email. You're standing in the same kitchen at almost the same hour, and the coffee maker makes the same sound it's made for 6 years. Nothing about the room has changed. You have no meeting to rush to, no email to check with dread, no boss whose mood determines the shape of your day. And the strange thing is how little that fact announces itself. There's no swelling music. There's just a Tuesday, identical in almost every visible way to 1,000 Tuesdays before the email, except that underneath this one, nothing is required of you at all, and you're the only person on earth who knows it. That's the real ending of the rat race, not a finish line anyone claps at. Just an ordinary morning that used to be borrowed time and now quietly belongs to you, with absolutely nobody around to notice the difference, and you finding, somewhat to your own surprise, that you no longer need them to. If this changed how you think about what actually needs to be visible for something to be real, subscribe. There's another one coming about the specific year most people are closest to this number without knowing it, and why almost nobody checks.